Morning. It's Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. It's 9 a.m. We'll call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do roll call, please.
Gotta hit present, or sign in and then present.
Yes.
You're good.
Okay. It tabulates slowly. Okay, we have 18 present and 3 absent today. Okay, in the packet, the presentation of the agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda as properly noticed. There's a motion by Pluff. Any discussion on the agenda? Otherwise, all in favor signify by aye. Opposed? The agenda stands approved. In correspondence, there was one letter from Linda Keno Waite regarding the Door County Fair. So it was included in your packet. I've gotten a couple other letters, one from Wisconsin Historical Society, the Janabel shipwreck, the schooner off of the town of Gibraltar, has been placed on the State Register of Historic Places and National Register of Historic Places. And there's another off the town of Liberty Grove that is being explored by the Historical Society. Okay, public comment. Is there anyone in the audience this morning that would like to make a public comment? Come up to the podium, state your name and address.
Good morning, my name is Randy Wagner, address is 120. Myself, I'm running for sheriff for Door County, and I'll be here for the remainder of the day till you guys are done. If you have any questions, you can contact me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment this morning? And for the third time, anyone else in the audience that might like to make a comment? Okay, seeing no indication, is there anyone online again?
Sure. I'll ask. And I'll ask 2 more times. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. And for the final time, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand.
Okay, seeing no requests, that would conclude the public comment portion. Supervisor's response. There were no topics raised, so okay. The approval of the minutes of the July 28th, 2026 County Board meeting were included in the packet. Okay. So there's a motion by Supervisor Rulard and a second by Supervisor Norton to approve those minutes. Any questions, corrections, or anything to those minutes? If not, all in favor of approval signify by aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes stand approved. County Administrator, monthly report. Yeah.
Just a short update this month. I think the memo kind of summarized where we're at. I just turned this wrong one. Just the one thing just to kind of point out is our addressing sign is progressing well. We're moving up into Liberty Grove. The one thing that we reported in the past is that we've had issues with Digger's Hotline. We are looking at an alternative, ours as a service that would help us work within the townships to help mitigate that. So hopefully that'll help with our time in moving the project going forward. But again, as of right now, the project is progressing well and we're ahead of schedule from what we had projected originally. So other than that, no other specific updates.
Okay, Ken also had something regarding resolutions, so I guess I'll just report a little bit on the 2026 resolutions coming up at the Wisconsin Counties Association. There's 30 new resolutions, 5 continuing resolutions. Door County had submitted 2 resolutions to WCA for consideration. One dealt with the corporate purchase of single-family homes. That was given an indefinite postponement. It did not meet the support of the association's resolutions committee. And the second was a resolution recommending sustainable funding for transportation in other counties. I've also submitted similar resolutions, so that one will be up for consideration by the county board chairs at the upcoming conference. Okay. Okay, Supervisor Zell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken, could you please provide a brief comment on the follow-up with the state regarding the airport construction and where our next steps are?
The airport should be completed this month now and should be open, but in terms of the items related to the cost overruns, we're still waiting for them to complete their, I guess, review of what happened, and we have not heard back on that aspect yet. But we do have it on the next agenda for next month for both highway and airport, or to have that discussion. So.
Okay, any other questions on Ken's report? Okay, I have no pending business at this time. Resolutions. Resolution 2026-54. Supervisor Combs.
Chairman, I'll move to adopt resolution 2026-54, authorizing application for and acceptance of financial assistance for dock refurbishment at Lily Bay County Park. This would come from the DNR County Conservation Aids Program for the listed dock refurbishment.
Okay, any questions about that resolution? Pretty self-explanatory as to the amount of money and so forth. Okay. We do have a motion then by Supervisor Combs and a second by Supervisor Norton. Any further discussion on that resolution? Okay, all in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Okay, that stands approved. Resolution 2026-55, Supervisor Rubler.
To approve resolution number 2026-55, approval of the Wisconsin DOT Public Transit Assistance Program, capital grant to the Transportation Department for a bus replacement. Whereas it looks like we're getting funding in the amount of $104,254 with a total project cost of $130,318, and we have a funding match requirement of $26,064, which will be taken out of the Door County Transportation Department's 8521 Trust Fund.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that resolution comes from the Administrative Committee, which is the oversight for the transportation program. Any questions regarding the funding and the purchase of a new bus, I believe is what they're doing. So, okay, seeing none, we have the motion by Supervisor Rulard and a second by Supervisor Norton to approve resolution 2026-55. All in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Okay, that stands approved. Okay, we're moving quite quickly. Ordinances. Mr. Fisher, the denial report from on the topic from Clay Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to accept the report on the rezoning request from Clay Banks.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Fisher and a second by Supervisor Clauhutch. The motion is to deny.
I didn't know if you wanted that in two segments, one motion to accept the report and another motion to accept the denial. But if you wanted it all in one, that's the way I would make it.
I think since it's a denial, we can do it all in one. Yeah.
Okay, that would be my motion then.
Okay. Okay. And the RPC is going to be looking at that topic in the future, is that?
Yes, we have already, we may revisit it, but for right now, we have decided by consensus to just not address it, basically.
Okay. So, any questions of Mr. Fisher? Okay, Supervisor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand that right, it was more of the willingness to make sure that it was more, that this type of thing is more uniform throughout the county and not necessarily against what they're asking for? Is that what it?
Somewhat correct. Different towns had input on it, and they all spoke for the way they wanted it. So we as a committee decided not to address it because it was almost impossible to address all the different towns' requests and put them into one comprehensive zoning ordinance.
But RPC will be looking at that.
Yes.
Yes. Perhaps making a county-wide change.
Well, perhaps.
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 Mhm. Okay. Any other questions by anyone? Supervisor Zettel?
Yes, the request from the town of Clay specifically wanted to address temporary use, and given the broadness of how the temporary use language currently is in the comprehensive zoning ordinance, as Supervisor Fisher noted, it was discussed at RPC, and land use director also indicated that a rewrite of the ordinance is budgeted for 2027, which will allow us to look at a lot of the questions raised during our discussions, and we'll be deliberating that next year as that work proceeds.
Thank you. Supervisor Hancock?
Yes, just a quick, since in public space, like, temporary use of what? Of your land with a certain vehicle, kind of house, a shed, I mean, it just is very, it doesn't say much, it's just a temporary use. What does that mean?
Yes, please. Sean could probably best answer that.
So under the comprehensive zoning ordinance for the county, to make life sane at land use services, we do allow a temporary use for a certain number of days in a year that is not otherwise permitted within a zoning district. For instance, you're in a residential district and you want to have a garage sale where sales would not otherwise be allowed. Because that use is temporary, we allow it as long as it's not a continuing garage sale or a continuing resale entity. The same would apply to weddings, such as we have weddings at Cape Point. Maybe that type of gathering wouldn't otherwise be allowed under zoning, or town festivals where we have vendor stands that wouldn't be allowed in the zoning where that festival is going on. We do allow that temporary use on a limited basis, so that we're not telling people they can't have a garage sale, they can't do this one day, they can't do that another day. But it's limited in scope. The town of Liberty Grove has the days authorized is a little shorter than the rest of the town, and that was something that was considered by RPC. Do we adjust the number of days? We looked at comparison with other counties, what they're doing. The county actually has one of the more restrictive temporary use regulations, but in a nutshell, it's allowing a use that otherwise isn't allowed on a temporary basis. And it could be anything.
Okay, any other questions of Sean? Okay. Otherwise, we do have a motion by Supervisor Fisher, second by Supervisor Claus, to approve the denial report on the comprehensive zoning ordinance from the town of Claybanks. All in favor of the denial, signify by aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. Next item would be a report on the zoning map of Bailey's Harbor. Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to accept that report.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Fisher and a second by Supervisor Zettel to approve an amendment report from the zoning map of the town of Bailey's Harbor. All in favor of accepting the report, signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed, the report stand, okay, there was one. Okay. Okay, the report is accepted. The amendment to the zoning map of Bailey's Harbor, Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to accept the amendment to the zoning map of Bailey's Harbor.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Fisher, second by Supervisor Zettel to approve the amendment to the zoning map of Bailey's Harbor. Would you like any explanation, or the maps provided were sufficient? Denny, you had a question?
Well, like explanation,
Okay.
especially since the person representing that area isn't in agreement with the report, so if we could go over the report, just the basics would be great to know. Yeah.
Okay, is there someone from the Land Use Services Department here? Okay, Sean, is there?
So this zoning ordinance map amendment request came from a property owner in the town of Bailey's Harbor. There was, if you look on page 30 and 31, sometimes the visual tells the picture better. So page 31 was the existing zoning districts of the proposed parcels. There are actually 3 listed there. The two top parcels you can see were countryside, but they were really surrounded by mixed-use commercial. The owner of those parcels wanted to make that area uniform. They also wanted to include in that mixed-use commercial that lower parcel where you see the pin. This matter was considered by the town of Bailey's Harbor. The town of Bailey's Harbor had voted in favor of allowing the change in zoning for the 2 upper parcels, but not the lower parcel. This was considered RPC, and RPC decided to go along with the town's recommendation of making that larger mixed-use commercial area uniform, but that southern parcel or the lower parcel not being included in the remaining countryside. The intent of the change was so that that property owner, which owns most of that mixed-use commercial area, could divide those parcels into smaller parcels to be used for both residential and retail use in the future. I don't know the extent of their plan, but that's what was indicated.
Okay, any questions of Sean? Anyone else with a concern? Okay, seeing none, we do have the sorry. Okay. Supervisor
I have
Peter.
a question about I got the maps mixed up in my head when I was looking at this before, so I apologize. But does anybody know why the existing zoning map had that carve out the way that it is? Because I agree, it does look, I understand the need to go to uniformity, but was there an intentional reason why it was left this way originally? Did I say that right? Yeah. I guess that would be my question. Thank you.
Yeah, the short answer is I have no idea. I'm not sure why it was that way in the first place. Yeah.
Anyone from the committee that would know some of the history? I'd venture that it's been probably years since these maps were created, and maybe at the time the town was not anticipating some of the growth that they're recognizing coming forward now, but that's a little speculation.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Hancock. Okay.
Last part of that is, I'm not seeing it on here, there's not any wetland impact, like we're not decreased, there's no wetlands in the area, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I just wanted to double check.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean, if you're correct, nothing indicates that there's wetland there, but if there would be wetland, that would be considered as an app when the applications come forward for the use of it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the permitted uses on the wetland area are different, so
Mhm.
that there's no intent to remove wetland designation in this area.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion by Supervisor Fisher and a second by Supervisor Zettel to approve the amendment to the zoning map for the town of Bailey's Harbor. All of those in favor? Oh, roll call, I apologize. Yes, the ordinance must be a roll call vote. Okay. The ordinance is approved with a vote of 17 yes, 1 no, and with 3 of our members absent. Okay, that stands approved. Special reports. We have none on the agenda. New business, the oral committee reports regarding the judiciary and public safety radio systems. Great plan. Debate between the chairman of public safety and.
Yeah, between the two of us, we'll get it done, but, the committee did discuss and they wanted to do a formal update to the county board. So we went through the process of looking for a preferred vendor for our communication system. We had actually 3 companies that submitted what we called our intent to negotiate. We went through a pretty rigorous selection process and review process, and we did make a recommendation to public safety to work with the Bay Electronics is the primary company that applied, and are working with a technology called EF Johnson. So right now, we're working through the formal process of doing a final negotiation of a contract. And hopefully, the goal is to have that completed by the end of the year, and have that full contract come to county board. But in essence, what we wanted to do at public safety was to select the preferred vendors, so that way we do that final negotiation process. But then also allows us to work through some of the other logistics in terms of how the project and contract would come together with some of the areas that were, I guess, in flux would be the best way of saying it. So, but we did want to provide a full report to the county board so that we know where we are and how the project is progressing. So I don't know, Colin or Alexis, if you wanted to add more, that'd be great. So.
And the 3 vendors that were submitted their intent to negotiate, I think they made it clear one of them pricing was considerably more than the rest, so they were out, and the 2 that were left, the CATS committee seemed to be in agreement that one had a much higher level of service potential for us and was more responsive to a lot of the questions. So they had all the work done and made it pretty easy.
Okay, so is the committee recommending a certain vendor at this time?
Well,
Okay.
for the radios and the equipment and the 911 call center portion of it, I get this one wrong. Ensight is working on the towers, is that right? Yep. So then there's Ensight works on the actual tower locations and the build out and that kind of thing. So the equipment part of it, though, I think is the more end user changes with the radios and all that kind of, like all of our public safety, fire departments, all of that kind of thing will be impacted by this rollout. So getting the user group set up and all of the logistics with the cutover. It'll be a big project for sure, but I think we have a good partner with Bay Electronics that knows our system and knows our county really well. I think we're set up.
Bay Electronics has a long history of working with our equipment with the various departments. So, any other questions?
Review committee, subcommittee that took a lot of time to review the documents and put in a lot of effort for this. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions of Ken? Anyone? Okay, that was just a committee report, so we'll accept that. There are other committee minutes are online. Any questions on those committee minutes? Vouchers, claims, and bills. Any questions on those? Okay, seeing none. Announcements. The next county board meeting would be Thursday, September 24th at 9 a.m. That's a Thursday rather than the typical Tuesday meeting. Some of us will be at the WCA conference This is slated from the 20th to the 22nd of September. And perhaps later today, those that ordered shirts, they should probably be here later this morning. And that's all I have, so motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Supervisor Jeancourt, second by Supervisor Pluff to adjourn the regular meeting. All in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Okay, then we'll take a heads here for this portion of the meeting. And Ken, we can turn it over to you.
Sure. So just note all your mics are on. So, and we also have it, you don't see it on the screen, but we are just providing it so the public can be involved in the process itself. So again, if you have questions, feel free to speak up, but also we have the mics on. So
I'm going to interrupt you. I turn it to you and I'm going to mention, we got the shirts earlier. I guess, are they still available to order if you want or not? That's past time.
Correct.
Past time. Okay. Okay. Very good. Deadlines are done. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So we're going to just kind of walk through the entire budget. And again, this is meant to be a workshop. Obviously you have, the ability to go through the budget in detail when you do your committee meetings. But we're going to walk through a whole series of worksheets and then each department and give you an opportunity to ask any questions or give any input, and then we'll go from there. I guess the main thing is what Steve's going to report to you is that as of right now, we have a balanced budget. So anything that we would add, we need to find a matching cut to keep it balanced. Obviously, if we cut, then we have capacity. So, but we're going to start on the levy limit summary, and I'll have Steve start us off with that, and he'll walk you through it. And he'll give you the page number to follow along. So,
all right. Good morning. On page 2 of your packet is the levy limit calculation that we always provide to the county board. The first number that you see, that 27 million, that's our starting number that we had for our 2026. Our net new construction went down compared to what was presented at the budget retreat to 1.275%. At the budget retreat in June, we presented to you with the net new construction of 1.690%. At that time, that number came from a 3-year average because we did not receive that number from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. So with that change, that decreased our net new construction by just a little over $112,000. So you'll see that $334,000. Now, the question is going to be, why did it drop so much? So what I received from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue is I get a 1-page sheet of the final numbers that basically is the numbers that are submitted from each town's assessor for each township. As I was going through it, I noticed that there were 2 towns that had a 0% net new construction. So I followed up with the Department of Revenue and I asked the question, why are these 2 townships have a net new construction of 0? And what happens is that every town assessor needs to file a municipal assessment report to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. In this report, that it helps assist the Wisconsin Department of Revenue to determine the equalized value for each district. So the 2 townships that did not file, I'll give you the names, is town of Claybanks and the town of Sturgeon Bay. So those reports that each assessor has to file, those are due on the 2nd Monday in June. And so they did not provide those reports by that deadline. So because of that, those 2 towns have a net new construction for this year of a 0% net new construction. Now, if they file the report anytime between now and next year, what will happen is that it will be considered an adjustment for next year's report. And then if they file, hopefully they can file on a timely basis, they'll have an adjustment for this year's information, and then they'll also have the new information for next year. So hopefully that will change. So that is the big difference as to why our net new construction went down for this year. Keep going down on the report. We have to take out our personal property aid. That's the information, the aid that we get from the state of that 174,000. And we come with our maximum allowed levy of just a little over 27 million. We also add what are considered outside the levy limit. That is our ambulance services of their levy portion of just a little over 5.2. We have bridge aid. This is also considered of that 35,000, and our debt of our principal and interest. That is, we're paying on the community center, ADRC, EMS central station of that little over 784,000. So our tax levy for 2027 is at $33,315,000. Now we move down into the middle of the report. That is the proposed budget. As Ken said, we do have a balanced budget right now. So with all the various departments levy portion for the 2027 budget, we have that $33,315,000. If you take a look at that, our levy in dollar wise went up by just a little over 408,000 compared to 2026. That is a 1.24%. The one number I do not have at this time, and I'm hoping I'll get it within the next, probably sometime in September, is our new equalized value. So we're still continuing of that 14,858,000,000 equalized value at this time is the same number that we utilized for the 2026. So I'm hoping sometime in September, I'll have a new number. So that will determine our mill rate, that percentage. So obviously if that equalized value goes up, the mill rate will actually drop down. So with that, there is, as Ken said, we do have a balanced budget. I guess if there's any particular questions related to the tax levy calculation. So, all right. So moving on, we're gonna move on to page 3. This is the summary of the budgets, comparing the adopted budget from 25-26, and we also have the proposed budget for 2027. You'll see in the far right corner is the change in the percentage of the tax levy from comparing 26 to 27. The first number I want to talk about in the 2027 proposed budget is that $15,669,123. Just to get a clarifying as to what that number is that we use reserves that we have set aside from prior years. These are monies that we set aside from prior years, and now we're utilizing some of those reserve funds, and that they are as a revenue source for the 2027. So for instance, we are taking in the 2027, $15 million that we had set aside, and that we're going to be utilizing that for the tower project in 2027. So we had set aside money from prior year. We set of 15 million. Now we're utilizing some of that 15 million, or that 15 million in part of for 2027. So we're showing it as a revenue source. So that is one number I just wanted to point out. So
excuse me, Steve. So what you're saying is we're bringing it from reserve, but the expense, there's a direct offsetting expense
that is
correct, related to that exact dollar amount.
That is correct. That is correct.
Mr. Chair, I had this similar, but I guess my more nuanced question, I appreciate that background. The other reserve supplied, is that a roll up from all of the different departments that are using reserve funds within their budget? It's a one line item for everything. So it's not just the 15, whatever for the towers, it's also whatever reserves in general.
That is correct. There is other reserves that are part of that as well.
Okay. So it's my understanding we do this so we don't have to bring back to the county board every time there is something taking place.
That is correct. So the reason why we have to show it in the budget, because if we don't show an expenditure or revenue inside the budget when we're doing it, we have to bring to the county board you'll see these resolutions as a non-transfer of funds. And we would always have to bring that to the county board, and then you would see a lot of them. And so by doing that, we budget that, we put that into the budget, so it's already part of the budget process.
Steve, that 15 million though is, some of the money was designated in previous budgets for the
Yes.
tower project.
That is correct.
But a large part of that comes from the general
That is correct.
account.
And some of that's like, for example, the museum too.
Yep, that is correct. Yep. So you want to go on, Ken, or do you want me to?
Sure. So are you done at the top?
Yeah, I'm done with the top part.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is Steve and I are gonna kind of tag team, but we're gonna walk through the budget. We thought, again, there's value. What we're gonna kind of hit on is like any department that's above a 5% variation, we'll just stop there and give you an explanation. But we will go through, if you have any questions on any of the other budgets, we will hit those as well. So just to start off, if you look under, I guess the first one, we're just going to start at the top, would be airport. Again, that one is based off our vehicle replacement program. Again, they're a smaller budget, and when they purchased equipment last year, but now we have to build that equipment back into their future acquisition. So that was their primary change. Otherwise, if you go through their budget on all their other line items, they pretty much match up 1-to-1. In other words, it was a zero-based budget except for the vehicle replacement. For child support, the primary change in that was a individual with health insurance. Again, if you go through their budget overall, there was no other really variations within their budget.
Correct.
Then going down, I'm just going to pull out the sheet. I have them marked, but that's when you kind of go through. And again, if there's any other questions on other budgets, please let me know. For county board, I guess there was just adjustments in terms of the allocations for spending. There's nothing major on that one there were any significant changes on that one. So
I could jump in on the treasurer. The treasurer, what they did is that they increased their interest revenue on their taxes that they collect. And also there was a decrease in their health insurance. So one of the plans that we did with our health insurance is that we have that spousal, if you remember, that one individual from the treasurer left our insurance and went on to their spouse's insurance. So that decreased the health insurance in that department. So that is the main reason why you're seeing a big negative increase in the tax levy for the treasurer's department. The next one I wanted to touch base on is the dispatch. I told Brenda, I said that she wouldn't have to say anything, so I guess I'll cover this for her. Right, Brenda? Yeah, okay. So what we did in 2027 is we allocate a portion of all the dispatch expenses to EMS. And in 2027, we increased that allocation in 2026, our allocation for total dispatch expenses, we allocated 28% to emergency services in 26. In 2027, we increased that allocation to 50%. So with that adjustment, there is if we would have used the 28% in 2027, that it's an increase of roughly about $328,000. I also want to point out, though, because we transferred the allocation from the dispatch and we moved it to ES, which is ES is considered underneath the levy limit, does not mean that the levy limit portion for ES increased by that amount. I told Aaron I'll give him a good shout out, but he did a great job. We told him he knew this was coming, and he also planned for that. So, but what he did on his end is that he increased his revenues to help offset some of that cost. So when we get to page 2 of this summary, if you look at his levy limit his only went up 66,000, roughly about 66,000, comparing 26 into 27. So I just wanted to point that out, that we did make a difference in the allocation, but it's not a one-to-one ratio because we decreased dispatch and increased ES. Is that anything else?
Yep.
I mean, I understand the mechanics of it.
Yep.
I guess I'm interested in the implications and the oversight and like just moving money around, right? So help me understand, if you could, where's the justification when you go from a 28% in 2026 to 50% allocation?
So Aaron did some asking around from other counties, and we're trying to figure out, like, there's an allocation as to, is there any rhyme or reason what other counties that have an ambulance? And we got the information that it is all across the board. So this was one of the reason, right, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but that was one of the reasons. So there is different counties that were doing different allocations, and we felt that it was, that to move it up to the 50%. I mean, we're also looking at, I wouldn't say that their call volume went up by 50%, but it has increased. And it was time, we thought that it was justified to make that allocation. I don't know if Kenny, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of, remember, we talked about various tools. We talked about this tool probably about 2 years ago in terms of the allocation. Again, there's no set formula with the state rule of how you can assign costs. But from our standpoint, in just talking it through, it seemed like a logical percentage, just divide it in half. We felt that was a good way to do it. So it's the ability, again, but I think that this to be transparent. So the shift wasn't, well, we want to shift over that cost and thus this tax the taxpayers more. What we did is we shifted over, but we also made appropriate cuts to try to account for most of it. So that way we wanted
revenues. So was it cuts or was it revenues?
Well, he made adjustments in
Just-
spending, but
yeah.
there's also adjustments in revenue. So, all right. So, I mean, from a tax levy standpoint, we didn't add on additional $300,000 of spending from that move, I guess is what we're trying to say.
But going forward, that allocation will be in the EMS budget. So it does open up room, excuse me, under the levy limit
Yes,
in the future.
we're going to keep it at that 50% going forward.
Is that a policy that's going to come through oversight committee then? So, or are we just going to keep, like, pretty soon the call center is going to be back under EMS, right? Like, is that where we're going?
No, I mean,
No,
say no.
I know.
I would say no.
I know, no,
No,
but like
no.
if we're budgeting it, I don't know what the scope of what you were trying to get out of the conversation today. So you're going through the mechanics of it, but the budget is about priorities and not just how we do the numbers together, but about the implications of the programs and all the things, right?
Sure.
So do you want to get into just the mechanics today so that we understand when we go back to the oversight committees to ask these questions, or is today the day to ask the mechanics of the questions?
No, you can ask both. We can cover both. And I guess really the mechanics right now is that we moved it up to an allocation that we think is defensible in an area that's gray in terms of what can be included in costs or not. I guess
Seems like an area where a policy would help.
Yeah, I would agree that it's
Thank you.
probably good to have a policy regarding
my
this
concern
change,
right now.
not just random.
What do we
change.
need to do to balance the budget this year? Thank you. That's my
At
comment.
least worthy of discussion.
Thank you.
To that, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
to that point, since we know that the county goes through a regular audit process from an outside auditor, is this something that we could ask them what the proper treatment is?
I mean, we've done that in the past. That's why the state statutes are not clear. So in other words, if you look at the statutes say that you can claim your EMS related expenses outside your levy. It doesn't say how you determine that and how you justify it. So from our standpoint, do we have grounds where we can justify where we assign those expenses? I think right now we could say yes, right? But again, there's that gray area and you have to be able to stand and, justify it should it ever be challenged. And I think that's what we're trying to say right now. We feel comfortable with that placement. But again, would we go to 100%? I'd say you start, right? As a policy standpoint, I think someone could challenge you on that and say that you're just shifting costs, right? So, but again, there is to your question, there's no specific policy from the state that allocates all that stuff.
Okay, one other one I'll touch base on is the facilities and parks. They went up just a little over 5%. Basically what it accounts for that is the utility expenses increased quite a bit in their 2027 budget. Also, in 2026, they also received revenue from the state for the Shooter's Dock project of a little over 300,000, which they're not receiving that because that particular project is almost completed. So that was the big change for facilities and parks.
But, excuse me, Steve, but even if you take the 300 out of their revenue from last year, there's still a million, reducing it down to 654 this year. What else is part of that reduction other than what you mentioned about Sugar's Dock?
For revenue?
And revenue side, I don't know if Wayne's here. I don't know if he has exact numbers as to what else went down. Oh, the other thing is that I think vehicles, right? Or you didn't purchase any equipment. And so when you have the revenue side for vehicles, we have that in reserve. So I don't know exactly the dollar amount, but I think you also didn't.
340,000 went down.
Yeah.
So that amount would have been moved into the revenue section,
Yes.
even though it
Yes.
was.
Yes, that is correct. And then, so yeah, it'll be a revenue, and then you'll see the expenditures of the purchase of the equipment. So that was a change. But then the other big change was the utilities. The utilities accounts
On the expense side.
went up pretty drastically.
Okay, keep on going then. Human resources down 14%, primary two reasons. One is insurance and also a reduction in our consulting services since we're looking at bringing on an HR director. So that's the primary change in that budget. Medical examiner just came in at 5%. The medical examiner, we actually contract out with Brown County. And that was a rate that's established with the county. Again, from our standpoint, it's still been a very reasonable service for us to continue that partnership, but there was an increase brought on by Brown County. Registered deeds had a decrease. That is primarily from just looking at their historical trends on revenue. So that was an increase in revenue that was projected. This one on the sheriff came in under 5%, but just wanted to point out on that one, there was some significant changes in that budget. The main item just to point out, and it's going to definitely impact us in the future in terms of policy, is that we lost or we're projecting to lose $200,000 in inmate fees that we collect. Brown County is going to be opening their jail in fall. And they informed us that we were not going to have those beds leased out going forward. So right now we dropped the budget $200,000 from that change in terms of their revenue. Likewise, we continue to get hit with medical costs. So the medical costs went up another $40K in terms of that contract item. So we have two things that are having some significant impacts in terms of cost. I know the sheriff is here, but I know we talked with both Kyle and Sheriff Stern in terms of, what's our path going forward. And obviously they're looking for other ways to generate or get individuals to possibly use up some of our beds. But at this point, we do not have anything that would be considered solid leads or anything related to that. So for right now, we're budgeting right now as we think it's going to happen in terms of that we don't have any additional lease beds.
So we're looking at contracting with other counties beyond Brown County, then I assume.
Yeah, well, we actually do contract with Kewanee right now.
Yeah, but I
We
mean,
are-
like ones that are farther out because it's, we aren't surrounded by counties.
Right.
So it's a little harder.
The problem that we have though too is that right now there's other jails that also have come on that are also looking to lease. So there's actually
competition.
There's
Got it.
competition. So what we used to get is somewhere around $50 a night. Now is well below that. So there's competition out there for beds as well. But
Just, excuse me, one other comment. I guess I'd like to see the oversight committee take a look at it's my understanding that you mentioned Green Bay and they have their own facilities, so they removed the inmates from us. But I also, my understanding that Green Bay is contracting now with Oconee County because they are over capacity. I would like some information as to why did they decide not to stay with us and go to Oconee? And is it cost? I'd like to see the oversight committee research that a little bit.
Okay. I was not aware, I don't know. But, want to come up, Tammy, and
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not sure where that information came from. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with Round County Sheriff. They're on schedule to have their facility open in October. He's only going to use 80 beds out of the 132. He's not going to be using any other counties. I'm not sure where that's.
Okay, thank you.
okay, just continuing on. For technology services, the main shift there is just well, there are some increases in our service contracts. Obviously, the service contracts continue to increase. Other area that was a primary line was just our equipment purchases. I don't know if there's any other questions on that one.
I'm sorry, which line were you on?
We're under technology services, and then we're gonna go to technology equipment outlay.
Okay, thank you.
The outlay is down 26%. I guess, I know Jason wants to say something about that, but to me, I contributed more in terms of a cycle. So what we do is we go through and ask departments what they need for equipment, and they provide all that to them. Then Jason goes through and he vets it in terms of like, okay, do they need a computer or not, even though they want one, that type of thing. So I think right now it's just more of a cycle. I would not say that it's gonna remain that low, but I think it's just a cycle in terms of trend of, we got a year where we're not asking for a lot of new equipment. Would that sound correct, Jason?
There'll be some ebbs and flows, but it's based off of our rotation plan, which is equipment between 5 and 7 years based off of its use and its life cycle.
Transportation, Steve, are you gonna cover that one? That was 6%.
Yeah, I don't have really nothing. Just that, so there's some allocations, expenses that went down to the transportation. We changed, so what happens is that, for instance, we'll allocate some of Ken's time and some of our time in the finance department for helping oversee that the transportation, and we kind of decreased a little of that allocation a little bit. Is that correct, Pam? I think Pam's here.
Yeah, indirect costs.
Yeah, indirect costs went down as well. So those were the main factors with the transportation.
And then the only last one under is just the veteran services. If you look at their budget line by line, nothing really increases, more related to the salary and wages, which is the allocation of insurance. So there's no changes in that budget of significance. Okay, so we're gonna go to then page 4.
So I'll take the county roads. Well, county roads and bridges, that went up a little over 17%. The main reason, the two main reasons why that went up is we increased the routine maintenance for the highways. Just so you know, the highway department, the county hires the highway department to maintain the county roads, and we increased the routine maintenance expense in our county roads. And the other big increase that we did was our snow removal. So we usually do a trend on our snow removal expense, and that has been increasing the last few years. So those were the two main factors as to why the county roads and bridges went up by that almost 18%.
And then this one thing too, as far as trend. So what we do is we look back at our trends. You can say, well, we haven't had as much snow, right? Historically perspective, but we've had bigger storms and also a lot of storms later in the year, which are always wet. So the time that we need to clear the roads has been longer. So our costs have gone up just because of that fact. So it seems like we're getting better at the end of the year, November, December, in terms of not having as much snow or lighter snow, but in spring, or as we head towards spring, we've been getting bigger storms that have a lot more snow that's been really wet or difficult for us to clear. So our costs have gone up just related to that. So sorry, Steve, keep going.
Let's see. Landfill, that went down. And the main reason with that, why it went down, is there was a state statute that changed, and there was an escrow funds that we have a little over 1.5 million. And the main thing is that we are able to, which these escrow funds are held by the state, and are required that, we have to require get permission from the state to be able to use. And what they do, they look back and say, okay, based on trends, they say, okay, here's the interest that this escrow's earning, and what are your projected inflation cost on that? Well, we are able to house that the escrow now, and we have control over that. So we're able to utilize the more of the escrow funds towards our budget. So again, this would be like a reserve that we're able to help offset. So what happens is the highway, we had a landfill that we closed, and we have roughly about 16 more years that we have to maintain it per the state statutes. And the highway department is the one that maintains it. They pump out the leachate and mow the grass. And so now we're able to utilize more of those funds to be able to help pay for those costs. So that was the main difference with the landfill.
Okay.
Steve, I'd ask a question there.
Sure.
Regarding the landfill, have the storage area for the waste from the city?
Yep. Yep.
Is there income from that or not? Or is that just a service we're providing?
No, that was just a service that we're providing. We're not receiving any income from that piece of that. So we gave them, it was a portion of that property to build their storage, right? Is that what it was? Their storage facility? Yep. Yeah. So we gave a portion of so what David is asking is that their SBU has a waste storage facility that they put on, and Thad could probably explain a little bit better than I could.
Yes, it was, they have a storage facility for their sludge material out there. It's neither an expense or an income for us. It's a place for them to have storage. They were storing on personal property, just outside of the city limits. We worked through the committees for them to be able to put up a structure, containment area. They haul it out there. They haul it out and spread it from there. So it's not an expense at all to us.
Or revenue. We don't
revenue.
generate revenue. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted.
Okay. So we're just going to go through some areas, although there's zero. So we're going to just spend some time just talking about the budget a little bit in terms of those items. So the debt service is pretty straightforward. That's a pretty constant number, as you can see. There's a little bit of an increase, and that's related to the administrative fee that's assigned to that. So that's why you see that 0.05. But that's again, as Steve mentioned before, that's our debt that's on the community center. Going down, then you'll see obviously the internal service fund accounts. So you'll see the highway department. Again, in that case, that's an enterprise, so their budget has zero impact on the levy. Then we get into the medical and dental. So you'll see that number. You can see that it was at 9.3. We're budgeting 9.855. So right now that represents a 10% increase in our medical. So again, what we presented at the joint finance and admin meeting is that right now the renewals at actually 14.1%, but they feel as we go through and get a few more months of experience that number will come down. And we're also hoping to get a favorable renewal on what we call our stop loss renewal. So we're projecting that we should be at 10% or below by the time we actually do the renewals. But in the budget itself, we have built in a 10% increase on insurance. So that's where we stand right now.
Yeah, I have a question there. So when we looked at it in the joint committee, there were a couple different numbers we were looking at. One was last year's approximately 8.8 million, if I remember right, for medical. And we were trending closer to 7 million this year. So the 10%, what did we use as the base to get our 10% increase?
So again, at the committee, you saw a trend of our utilization going down. So like last year, there was a trend that we were around 8.8 and we're down into 7. So in other words, our utilization has gone down. In other words, that our insurance program's performing well. While that's performing well, you still have all your other costs that you go into it. And you also have to look back and include our past experience. And that's where they get that number as far as an average projection. So when we added all that in, that's where the 14.1% came in as an initial renewal rate from our consultant, which is USI. Now, again, if we continue on with, again, a few more months of experience, we're hoping that we continue to perform well in terms of our performance on the insurance and utilization, hopefully driving down that number because we'll be dropping off higher months of experience in how they come up with the projected rate. And then likewise, the other thing, like I mentioned before, if we can get a renewal that does not, usually they include like a 15% increase on your stop loss, which right now is built into that. But if we can get that renewal under 5%, which we think we can, then that will also drop down our projected renewal below that 10% number. So again, in terms of a budget process, we built in 10% because we think that would be the conservative number for us to utilize going into the budget. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you're really working off the projection. So what we're hoping is last year, October, November, and December were bad months.
Yep.
So hopefully October drops out of there and our projection starts to show a closer to a 10%. Is
Correct.
what you're saying. Okay.
Correct.
I have a question on the utilization. Again, not the mechanics of it, but like, do we have any report outs, trends, ideas on why utilization is down or decreasing? Do we have healthier staff, or is the cost too expensive that they're just not using it?
Well, they accounted something. Some of it was our program change and design. Another part was what we implemented was a Gardner program. So that refers individuals to better performing doctors. That's more of a long-term look, but they do feel that we accounted for some savings there. And obviously another thing was our health savings plan where we actually moved individuals off our insurance. So, and that was also a large part of it. So part of it's not people going less. We just simply got some people off our insurance as well. That also helped the plan overall.
Into a health savings account, or what is?
Well, what they do is, in other words, if the spouse has the ability to get insurance, they move to their spouse's plan.
That's a new change.
Correct. That was implemented last year. Correct. Okay. Any other questions on that? Where it stands? All right. Workman's comp. You can see that there is obviously an increase on that. That's just based off initial numbers that Steve has built in. I don't think we had the formal renewal yet.
No.
But we built in an increase for workman's comp. Again, that's our insurance for workplace injuries. So we always try to track that in terms of how we perform. Again, but that's also part of a pool. So part of it's the pool with the company you work with in terms of the Aegis, right?
Yeah.
So that's obviously all the counties together, but then there's also a portion that's attributed to us specifically. There's like a mixed formula in that. So our performance has been, it's gone up a little bit, but we're still well below trend. So our numbers have been pretty well for that. But we do have a little bit of an increase built in for that at that 455. So and then just continuing down, I guess the other big number that really stands out to me would be the capital projects, which we'll get into. It will show you the exact reason why that's up. But again, we moved, if you recall, Steve and I always harped that our sweet spots, that 4.6 to 4.7. You can see that that's at 5.1 right now. And we'll go through that when we look at the capital model. But again, it's what you're going to see, this is kind of like a 1-year adjustment. And then you're going to see that our capital spending goes down and drops below our projected 4.6, 4.7. So we're intentionally putting some money aside for, projects and in anticipation of trying to bring that down as we start to see more pressure on the budget side itself. Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question on the capital projects. So a lot of that 42 million in revenue would be the reserves that we're using in 2027, approximately $15 million. Are you comfortable that we're going to maintain a cash level to support the interest that we have in the budget? We have about 3.2 million in interest, but we're going to use up a lot of cash this year.
Yeah, we're still figuring that in as part of it too. So that is one of the things when I talk to Ellers about that, we look at our cash flow as well and making sure that we can be able to sustain, and we will be able to sustain that 3.2 million of interest income as well.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so then just working down that sheet, it gives you the picture of where we are with everything above what we consider the line, and then we get into what we call the outside the cap, which is your ambulance and bridge aid. And there you can see again, the increase is only 1.28 for Aaron's area, and the bridge aid remained constant. So with that, are there any specific questions for the budget, just in terms of department wise or anything?
But
Going back up to debt service, how many years are left on that?
So we are at 2036 is when we're done. There is early we could pay off. It's towards the end of 2027. We could pay it off if we want to. But otherwise, 2036 is when our last payment is.
Excuse me, Steve, I would assume that that interest rate is pretty.
It is favorable, yes. There's, yeah, we would not go out right now to get refinance or redebt for that. No, there's no way, no. Yeah, that is correct.
Mr. Chair?
yes,
The Green Special Projects Fund, can you touch on what that's for? The 37,376,000.
So
Yes, I should.
yeah, it's the special project fund was all the ARPA funds. I don't like to use ARPA anymore, but it was the old ARPA funds. So these are what we put into the budget for what we know right now. Obviously, I have to make an adjustment to this, but it's not going to be any effect to the levy, because the Finance Committee last meeting approved some changes. So there was a reserve balance, if you know, that was unallocated. The Finance Committee approved to allocate about 100,000 for the ADRC, and 100,000 for soil and water for invasive species and water testing. So that
ADRC was 200,000.
What's that?
I thought ADRC was 200,000.
Was it two?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So you are correct. I'm sorry. Good. Thank you. 200,000 for the ADRC and then 100 for soil and water. So then these are various what we have that I know of for the use of the special projects that are going to be in there. So there will be like the soil and water has the water testing, invasive species. Health and Human Services has their sober living program. And then trying to think of, I think Aaron is using some for his training for paramedics. So those are, and also land use is using some for their program or operations there. So.
And this one thing, as far as changes too, is obviously for the sober living, at one time we identified it as looking for purchasing a facility itself. So that's been presented to both Finance and Health and Human Services, and then back at Finance again. So that's actually being transitioned to more of an operational program. So what we're looking at doing is actually leasing a home for females and then using one of the 980 houses for males. And then we're going to use the funds that were part of the special fund and plus some of the opioid funds and any grant dollars they get to actually start a program for sober living. So that's the intention for use of those funds. The way that was presented to both Finance and Health and Human Services is that we have funding for sure for 5 to 6 years, but it was conservative. So if they can get additional money from rent or from billable hours or from grants, that program would be extended out to the future even longer. But that was both presented and approved by the Finance Committee as far as the reallocation of those dollars. So,
Mr. Chair, just make sure I remember this. The 200 out of all those monies, the 200,000 was the only monies that were going to be allocated for operational use with ADRC, and that was specific to the Meals on Wheels, if I remember right.
yeah. So the one request that came in for the 200,000 is that the ADRC right now, just based off the projections that we're going to get into 28, we're starting to see some shortfalls, right? So one of the things that Joe's been looking at is what do we do in terms of the ADRC in our operations? So they're expecting a shortfall for next year and probably the next year, but they are working with the community foundation to get an endowment fund set up. So what they had asked the committee is to have a gap between the time to maintain their meal programs, because they feel that the meal programs will become more significant as we age. Until a time that we can hopefully have the endowment fund hopefully offset some of the costs. So the committee thought that was a good strategy in terms of using those funds and approve that allocation. Okay. Any other questions? So let's.
I didn't ask one. Sean, you weren't at the finance meeting. We talked about the opioid funds that might be available for some of these programs.
Sure.
Do you have any idea how much overall opioid funds may be coming in, or the trend going forward? I mean, we've gotten one payment, but there's more expected. How frequently, or just an update on that?
So there were many settlements with different offenders, for lack of a better word, and those payments are usually made annually from each defendant or each group of defendants, and they're scheduled to be made over the next several years. Now, I think the payments for a lot of the defendants were front loaded, so we may see a lesser amount annually, but we are scheduled to receive payments into the future. The exact numbers I don't know off the top of my head, but it will continue in the future.
So currently it was around 400,000, I think, was a payment. That was a number thrown out from the opioid. Maybe I'm mistaken.
We have roughly about that. I want to say 400 to 450 right now for that we've received so far.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess there's probably maybe roughly, I thought I saw last report that I think you said was roughly about 28,000, give or take, annually that we might be receiving for the next 10, 12 years. I don't know.
So we're using this one big time money for the sober living facility, but the number going forward is going to be much less.
Yes.
Very likely.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before
Yes.
we move on, I have a big picture question.
Go ahead.
So I think you're going to move on. So I had a question about like this budget comparison year spreadsheet that we have. And I think I've mentioned this before too, but comparing, to me, I'd like to see more accountability in reviewing the numbers of the actual expenditures from the departments. Those show up in the worksheets at the committee level. So I hope that as supervisors, we're looking at the actual expenditures. But when I look at this worksheet comparing 25 and 26 to our proposed, the 25 and 26 are the planning documents, right? They're not our actual. So then now comparing what we planned versus what we continue to plan, I think there's value to that. But when we look at actuals and we think about staffing shortages and all of the other things that happen throughout the year, I think there's a need and an accountability aspect of looking at what the actual expenditures are compared to what we continue to budget out. So how have you guys looked at that?
So,
and I have a follow-up.
I'll take first. So I think there's a link. I don't know exactly on your thing. So on the website, we have all the department detailed, and you're going to see 23, 24, 25 actuals. Then you're going to see 2026 amended, and then you're going to see 26 used or actual, and that'll be as of June, the end of June of 26, and then you see the estimate and then that. So that was one of the things when we met with majority of the departments, and we looked at those trends, and that was one of the things that we had to discuss with department heads, is that instead of looking at what you've actually budget from year to year, to start looking at those trends of actuals. I mean, we're talking revenues, and also we're talking expenditures as well. And departments have done that, and that was one of the things, and that's why we printed out that report, because otherwise if I go any further, then I can't get it on one page. So that was one of the things that we started looking at even for this year's budget, as well as going forward. We look at the trends, and we were making, asking departments, okay, we're seeing these trends, why are you budgeting for this amount? And then they would have to give us an explanation and say, oh yeah, we could increase, decrease, whatever that case may be. But we have looked at that.
Oh, it sounds like this is the first year, so I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think as you go through those individual department budgets, the explanations of the accounts get really confusing, right? Like there's contracted services, and then there's services contracted, and it's like, So notes on the individual budgets, some department heads are great about doing that. I've mentioned that in the past. But then having a roll-up summary in a similar format that you have to the adopted here would be helpful as we look at a higher level big picture with this group. So thank you.
Just one thing for, okay, I said one thing. So when you, at the committee level, you see the budgets, you should see anything you should be able to ask a question on it, but anything that's considered professional services or a contract, we actually have the department place in there, a description of what it is. So that's been added to every budget. So if it's not there, let us know and we can make sure we get it added. But that's a change. So any of those types of things are all been identified. We've done that, I think, now for 2 years. But that should all be in your budget, so that way you're clear on what those expenditures are. So hopefully you'll see those and have justification for all those. So I just wanted to clarify that one part.
Thank you. And then I admit last night, but I have looked at them. I was curious, I guess my existential question is like, based on that, then anything left. My assumption is that, or how I understand the mechanism here is that if the department heads have any money left over in the budgeted line items, they can request carry forwards. But if they don't, and that money sort of sits in their budget or gets transferred to the general unassigned, where in all of the documents do we see that transfer from the different budgets to the general fund at the end of the year is my like big question. Because I tried to do this homework on my own, and where I looked is in the budget proposals, and there are some like there was a general thing, and I'm not sure how all of these department namings like move over to your blue table. I didn't ask that very well, I'm sorry. So on the shared drive, there's the 2027 proposed budgets, and there's the different printouts for the departments, but then I couldn't necessarily translate those for the general back to your blue summary sheet. So that's why, one, I'm asking if we can get a similar table so that it's more apples to apples. And two, where do you see the transfer of unspent funds back into a general account? Which department budget do I see that?
So, well, let me do the first part and see if you can clarify.
Yeah.
So what happens is what we do is we call the budget closeout. So that takes a while because you obviously have grant reconciliation, like for human services and stuff that goes probably into, we'll say April, but there's a time where we actually like close the budget. And then Steve will go through and what we do is we look at every single department budget, right? And on some of those, if there is, well, I'll keep it simple. So we'll go through all the budgets and we close on that part. Then that report's then provided to finance, and it shows you like a total summary of how each department performed, and then the final transfers of funds. So for example, Steve has to make final transfers for like vehicle replacement and those types of things before you say, because I'll give you one example. So I budgeted $50,000 for a car. They buy the car, right? But Steve, we didn't transfer that money yet. So he still transfers that as an end year transfer. So those types of things clean up. So anyways, you end up with a final number, and obviously we finish in the black, which is good. That number is presented to finance as a closeout, and then we say, okay, that money goes into the undesignated fund, and then on the following month, you'll start to see in reports that there's comes part of the audit with that new balance in there that included surplus or money in the black is now part of the designated fund. So you make that adjustment on the finance report. So then finance will start to see those every single time.
So that's roll up again. It's not, and I keep using that. Hopefully that's the right word, but it's not an individual like department transfer. What I'm hearing is that there's not a department based tracking of the transfer. It's a one number that gets reported out on the monthly reports to the finance committee.
Correct.
Okay. So then maybe my question is, it might be nice as an oversight committee and accountability, not just to see the actuals, but then to see how much at the end of the year did get transferred over from, and I hear you from the replacement funds and all of that, like, I am uniquely aware of how complicated this is. So I'm not, I know what I'm asking, but I think from an oversight perspective, this is the work of it.
Yeah,
So
we provide that report. So we have a report for every single department, how they perform and where they finish.
So
where is it?
It's on finance. It's presented to finance as part of the budget closeout, and it's made as, and then that's provided into the audit. But there's a one-page summary report that we provide, and we did that I know last year we provided it after the retreat. I mean, we
Yeah.
have, but it's in the packet, but we can send it out to
Yeah.
the full board.
Okay,
And-
thank you. As
and-
long as I can
Yep,
go find it,
that's-
but I didn't know. So thank you.
Yeah. To add to that though, in 2025, I did make a change, and that if there is a transfer, I'm just gonna use a simple as vehicle replacement for a department, because if those departments that have to have vehicles, we put money aside. I did in 25 actually show the transfer coming out of that department, going to the general fund or
Thank
to
you.
the reserve. I started that in 2025, and I'm gonna continue to do that. It was helpful for us as well, and also for the departments too, to kind of say, okay, here we're transferring out. Going to your question regarding carry forwards, excuse me, that the carry forwards was not approved until April of this year for 2025. After that is completed, I do an entry, a budget entry to whatever those accounts that the departments are requesting into their budget for 2026. Now, where are you going to see that? In the detail, it's called the amended budget, but it's going to be, that number will be part of the amended budget on the detail report that you'll see online. Is there. Now, you might not say, if you look at the carry forward and you say there's a $20,000 to whatever, you're not going to see it's going to be intermingled with whatever was budgeted. So
That
that's
explains
how-
what the amended budget line is for me.
That
Thank
is
you.
correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys. I mean, it sounds like I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I think-
the one thing that could be helpful is that I could try, I'll see how it goes, but I would have to take off is put the adopted, and then you'll see the adopted and the amended, the 2026 adopted, 26 amended, and you can see that on the report. I would have to see how that's gonna look, but,
I like it on one page though.
well, that's the thing.
And the 3-year
And
look
the
back, I
one
think
thing
is-
is that we look at for 3 years, it helps us for when we look at the trends.
Yeah, and I think
So-
that 3-year period is pretty standard to
Yeah.
look back, so that's
Yeah.
good. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Alexis, I think there's been more effort by Ken and Steve to review the department budgets and recognize why there was excess funds at the end of the year. Should that reflect into next year's budget and what needs to be brought to the general fund and what can be carried over? And that's all part of the finance oversight. But it'd be good to have the individual oversight committees be aware of that too. Because they are, as now, these budgets are going to go back to oversight committees to take a look at.
Yeah. And for finance to look at, God, I
The
don't
overall
know,
picture.
40 some different individual budgets like that seems like a lot. So that's what the oversight committees are structured. I mean, I know we're lean and mean these days, which we can talk about at a different time, but
Yep. The report that shows the summary from the previous year. So we'll have that each pack, so that way every committee can see it. So that's a good idea, because it's a good check-in tool. So I think that's a great idea. We can include that in all the packets going forward for next month. Okay. All right, so if we're gonna just kind of go down on the list, well, let's talk about the wages and pay for performance. So we presented at the joint meeting for wages. We have included a 3.5% increase, and that's broken out, that's split though. So we're doing, based off the committee input, we're doing a 2.5% aging of the plan. Now, if people aren't familiar with aging, what that means is we take our pay plan and we take whatever the pay grade is. So if the market of the pay grade is at $10, we age the plan the 2.5%, and the employee moves with that percentage. So we call it the aging of the plan. So in other words, the employee gets a lift, but also the plan gets a lift. So if they were at 100% of the pay scale, if they're at 100% of the pay scale, they will stay at 100% of the pay scale after that aging. Okay. Then the other part is the 1% pay for performance. And that would actually move them up within the pay plan. So if they were at 100% after their pay for performance, they'd be at 101% of the pay plan. So again, we have that built in as 3.5% total. Again, 2.5% for the aging and 1% for the pay for performance. The one thing we have built in, and the committee didn't make a final decision, but we still have it as it's presented in your packet, to where, in essence, those that are below 100% would actually see it as a 1% actually base increase. And those that are at 100% or above would see it as a 1% bonus. So that's how we have the budget built right now. Again, that's up to the discretion of the board, but that's how Steve and I have the budget built with that number. So
Isn't a 1% bonus compressing their salary?
correct. So the question is,
Get to the 115 that, that we have on this nice little sheet.
yep,
that I
correct.
still
So
got. Oh, I printed this off.
So the question is, and it was brought up, right? So our pay plan, if you look at it, goes from 88% as the low. And then we always have what we call the market rate, which is considered the 100%. But then we also project a salary out to 115%. In other words, that's the way an employee could fall within anywhere within that wage plan.
Wow.
So the question, well, wait, we're going to get to your question. So the question becomes is how do we, there's a two-part answer. So the one concern was always trying to get the employee to what was considered the market. So in other words, if they're below the 100%, how do we make sure we get them to market? Then the other part is, well, what do we do with those do we continue to move them up through the plan so they can get to 115% or not? So obviously if the employee's at market, then you can say, well, they're at market and we're just going to do bonuses and we got you at market. So then, yeah, I could end up with a whole series of employees. One's been here for 15 years and one who's been here for 10 that are both at 100%. But again, they're at market. So it's just a matter of philosophy, and you guys set the philosophy, but it's also what can you afford, right? So it's a cost to change that. And that's what we did this past year. But again, and that's what we're recommending, but there's a cost to implement that. So yes, to your answer, yes, we are creating compression at market.
Does anybody get to the 115%?
It depends, right? So right now we're at these 2 years, we'd say no. At these 2 years, no, we're not. In the past, we've had that as a wage increase as well. So yeah, they moved up to 101 or 102, right? So that has varied in the past, but again, it's just a matter of what we can afford. So.
When was the last time we did a wage study?
That was done in 2023 with implementation into 24, and we're actually due for update.
So when that wage study was done, what was the average increase needed to bring us to market, to get us there?
I'd say at least 6%, if not more.
So why are we only doing 3.5? Because what's going to happen is we're going to come to another consultant and we're going to be way off. So to me, it makes more sense to do a little higher incremental so we don't take such a big hit after our consultant, because it's just going to keep happening. Inflation isn't going anywhere.
Yep.
I've said the whole time I'm not happy with this small of a rate increase. Mm-hmm. So that's just me. I would like to see it higher.
I mean, I guess it's open mic. So like same. And we've always had concerns about the paper. I mean, since I know I haven't been here for 2 years, but when I was on before, it seemed like every year we would look at this and the like structure of how people got paid and the increases kind of changed too. So I don't know how much certainty that gives to the staff and the employees that are here, planning and moving forward. So that's always been something that I don't understand, is like the structure of it changes. And my other concern with this merit-based pay increases, I'm glad to see at least we've sort of evened that out where, there used to be the different steps. And if you got the highest level, you would get an X amount, but there's always concerns about rating people at that high level. So then nobody ever actually achieved that increase. So your merit-based pay was also linked to department heads colloquially, right, generally not being able to give that highest, right, even though we have those performers that would quote unquote. Okay, so all that. So I don't know if there's there's 1,000 different ways to do this. I think you guys balance a lot of different things, right? Like all of the things. And I think when we continue to cut the insurance side of it too, and now like one of the bennies of, or many of the benefits of working for the government is work-life balance, great health insurance, good leave policies, and all those things. So when you take away one of those with the insurance things that we're trying to do to save money and all of the cost cutting on the county side and transferring those costs to the employees, like you're all of these raises and all of the other things you're doing also eat into the actual take-home pay at the end of the day as well. So you and I are not gonna, I mean, there's a lot of discussion to happen there, I think, but I guess just that's my perspective as someone who, again, sort of lives in this pay world. So thank you.
Again, and that's, I mean, that's why we're at the retreat. So again, this is Steve and I are presenting to you a budget. So it's up to you if you want to modify the rates, right? I know it was brought up at the retreat that we thought they were too conservative, so we bumped it up 0.5%. Again, if you want to change that, I guess, give us the guidance, and I mean, I need the will of the board to say that you're willing to do it. Now, we do an increase of, let's say you want to go up to 4%, right? So that 4% is going to be probably, because we said 1% is like 350, so it's about $175,000. We'll have to find that in essence to balance the budget. So, I mean, we could work that out and try to find those funds, right? So obviously one thing, right, there's different ways I could find those, but again, it needs, I guess we just need some input from the board and where we're at. So when we presented at finance and admin, our wage consultant recommended a 3 to 4% increase or aging of our plan overall is where they think we would be at. Again, not having to worry about tax levy and balancing your budget, right? So I guess we're pushing against that. And I think we've always said that too, is obviously we want to make sure that we're paying our employees, but as we pay our employees, we're also digging ourselves a hole in the sense that next year hits us and now we have to, in essence, find those cuts to pay those employees, which is what we always had thought we wanted to do in terms of priority. But again, how fast we want to accomplish or go down that path is also a balancing act. So again, Steve and I are presenting what we thought. We tried to increase it a little bit, but if you want to change that, I mean, it just takes the input at this session to really talk about it and talk about how we're going to get there.
Teresa.
There's a payroll reserve account, correct?
Payroll contingency.
Yeah. How much is in there?
Probably close to 6.
I remember 6 something.
6.2 million.
We could easily take it from there, correct?
Well, yes and no. If you take it to cover, then you're going to build a deficit. So that would only be a short-term fix. So the problem is if you start taking from a reserve, yeah, we could fix it from here. But what are you going to do for 28? What are you going to do from 29? And eventually, if you keep on taking it from this reserve to help with the increases, that reserve is gone. And when that reserve is gone, then what are you going to do? So
So what is the reserve used for now? I guess I don't understand because we have the wages budgeted.
Yep.
So the reserve's twofold. One is our liability that we're supposed to have on balance in terms of meeting our liability from the auditing point.
It's roughly, so what that means is that we have, if everybody would leave right now, and it's roughly about $3.6, $3.7 million. If everybody would leave right today, we would have to pay that out from their PTO balance. So that's 3.7, roughly about that. So we have to keep that amount in there as a part of our liability. So really it's, yeah, we have 6 million, but we don't have 6 million to utilize for anything else.
But we can draw that down. So one of the things we're looking at doing is drawing that fund down because it's gotten a surplus.
Yep.
So we'll use that probably towards one time towards the towers project or bring it back in line. Again, our liability at one point was probably closer to 4.5 at one point in time, but we've had retirements, so that liability has come down. So we can adjust that reserve accordingly. So
isn't the main reason for that reserve the compensated absences?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we have almost 6 million in there, we need 3.7, there's, a couple $1 million that we could use towards the tower project. Or
yeah, and that's
Correct.
what, yes.
That's what we're intending to do.
Yeah, and we'll bringing that to the finance committee here within a month or two to kind of go over all the various different reserves that we did that probably about month or two ago. We brought all the reserves to you.
Right.
So we'll bring them again with some recommendations.
So I had a question also on this last wage study that was brought up. So we implemented it in 24 and you said, I think it was about a 6% increase. Did we increase everybody 6% or that just increased the pay scale 6%?
No, it was probably about the average about what people got for increases
In that year?
in that year.
Yes.
Well, I think some of this is good discussion. It's important to look at these salaries, and maybe it is time to do another study, even though it hasn't been that long. Salaries have changed an awful lot out in the community, both in government and outside. And because we're in a lot more inflationary period, harder to find employees, and we need to be as current as we can, I guess.
I don't think it's just finding employees, it's retention of employees.
Right.
I think
Oh, it
that's
is.
the big one that I've noticed in my 2 years here is there's been a lot of flip. I mean, and that's, that's where I think people are thinking that we do need to have a little bit higher is if we're going to actually maintain and start to build a future. I mean, there's some big key players that are leaving this body in the next year. And some of them yeah. So, I mean, I think if we're thinking about these long-term things, if we're going to be bringing in some new leaders into this building, we need to make sure that we're compensating them well so we can keep them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a different work environment. I think there's more young families that move more frequently. I got family myself that has 3-4 jobs. They're 50 years old and they've just changed occupations and maybe moved out of the area and so forth. But that's all part of our attracting employees and keeping them here. So.
And then just for the rest of the board, I mean, one thing we did talk about is obviously in the pay for performance. I guess in the government sector, it's very difficult to have a pay for performance program. So one of the things that the committee even talked about is, we have ours is more like a pass fail. It's a check-in point. So, maybe we should just not even have a percentage tied to pay for performance and just make it part in aging. And maybe just do like a 1% bonus across the board. And if they appreciate that, just at least going through the process and sitting down with the employees, the more important part, and talking about their progress and what they're doing as far as goals. So that's one thing obviously we're looking at. So, but again, because they did ask. So right now I'd say we have about a 98% pass on our pay for performance. So it's not truly an incentive system, but we just had that tied to that just so we had some value yet established for the program. But again, that was brought up at the joint committee, and that's something obviously we'll look at for the next year as well. So.
I understand also in your comments, and I do hear you that like you're doing the balancing of what we're asking for and balancing the budget. And I guess my comment is to say that giving direction on like where to offset those costs is an unfair ask of this body, I think, because we're looking at very high level numbers at this level, and even the individual department budgets are, sort of Greek until you really get into them, and we don't have that level of discussion in a 2-hour committee meeting. So I think part of the work on our side can be looking and making sure that we're accountable, holding department heads accountable, like I've been asking, and you guys have been doing a great job of that 3-year trend and looking at actuals. And, I heard you say a couple of times too, Ken, that, we are finishing in the black. So even though these budgets and the planning documents look bleak, I think the next thing we're going to talk about with the positions, and I appreciate all the write-ups for the public health nurse and other positions where, to Supervisor Shaw's point about the turnover, and I think even Vinnie Hancock, when I was on board originally, will say, a lot of that black comes from the salaries that we're not paying because we can't fill positions, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to believe that we all have the same goal, and it's just a different way of getting there. And I want to make sure that we're asking fair and appropriate questions of each other, because asking us as this body to say, okay, well, where do you want to cut? We are not given an opportunity to understand the budgets in a way that can answer that question.
No, and I guess just to be fair too, I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying
okay,
that.
Then I misunderstood your question.
Right. I guess the only thing I'm saying is that it's the will of this body to give us guidance to where you want to go, right? So if you said you wanted to do, let's just say 4%, right? You can say that to us. I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's about $175,000 hit. I'm not asking you to say, okay, let's take that from this department, to this department. Well, I mean, Steve and I will go through and we will give that a report back to you saying, this is where we found that money to make that happen. And obviously you guys need to support it, but we're not asking you to identify that in the session. What we're looking for is big picture, right? Do you guys seriously want to do 4%? Someone's got to say, hey, either we want you to go down a path, they get up nodding heads, or do an informal, not a formal motion, because we're not doing it that sense. But I just need to make sure that I have consensus from the board of the budget we're building, so that way we can actually publish it and make sure we have a balanced budget that gets published, right, by the end of September. So
you'd be talking about maybe doing a 4% and not doing the bonuses per se, but just it'd be on their salaries? Is that what you're saying? Or are we saying that we're going to give them whatever number that was,
Well, again,
1% in their whatever?
right. I mean, so right now you have a overall 3.5% left, right?
Yeah.
How I divide it up is really, we can go different ways, right? On that part, you can make it all part of the aging, or you could split it half, whatever percentage you want to do, right? But I'm just saying to go from an overall lift from 3.5% to 4% is about $175,000 approximately.
Yeah.
Without holding Steve to the number right there. But so if you want to do that, then give us the guidance, and then we're going to say, well, just so you know, we're going to have to find that money, right? And then make that adjustment. So, and we would come back and report to you of how we did that.
I would say I would like to see the 4% and the paid for performance gone away with. Because to me, if 98% are participating anyways, there's no incentive. So, and you're never going to get people to that 115, like she said. So that's what I would like to see, 4%.
But
I'll go along with that because as I'm understanding this whole process, you get your bonus on here and then next year you fall back to your original number. So basically, no, if you're doing that, nobody really gets a raise. They don't know what's coming next year. Maybe there's no bonus, so now they've got the same salary as they started out this year. Next year is nothing, and that might not be too satisfying to some people. But what we have to do here, we got to keep the employees happy, because if you don't have happy employees, we're looking at shortages here now, and there's other opportunities in the community, in the county, wherever, where people would get more money than they're getting here, and you can't blame them if they go somewhere else to get more money. That's not helping us at all. So whatever we can do to keep these employees happy, it's going to cost us $175. If it's going to cost us $275. We got to be creative here in this budgeting process and look at everything. And do we really need something here in order to help out what we're trying to do with the staff at the county level?
Ellen,
Well, just as a point of reference, what are we using as the rate of inflation?
What do you mean?
I mean, is it 5 point something %? What is the rate of inflation?
It varies. I mean, right now it's up. There's the Department of Revenue publishes an inflationary rate every August. So, I mean, we use that when we do some of our negotiations. It has not been that high, but I'm expecting that the August number, I don't know if it's published yet for this year, will be higher, obviously, because of inflation, but it's been around that 2.8% in that range. 2.8 to like 3.3 has been some of the numbers. We could look it up, but.
Well, just so that we're above whatever the average worker is thinking their inflation rate is, because I think that's really important. Because that's one of the things that really has people upset. And if we can show people that we're above that, I think that's important.
to follow up on that comment, and Buzz, I think for clarification for myself and maybe some of the rest of you, is that when we talk a 2% increase, that's on the pay scale, but the bonus doesn't apply to that pay scale. So we're starting back with a lower number next year. We're giving the employee money, but it's not elevating the pay structure as much.
And when you give them a bonus, they're gonna be paying extra taxes on that, because they're getting a bigger amount.
It'd be interesting to see what other counties are maybe doing, the efforts to retain employees. It's been suggested to me a longevity pay, so you reach a 5 years status, you get some sort of bonus to keep them here. I mean, there's other options.
Usually
Yes.
leave, yeah. So I want to, oh, I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think it's important context as you think about your admin committee and things like government employees and public service. The people that go into public service are not here to like necessarily make all the money and all of that. It's coupled with being
chairs.
For a new chair, I think.
Oops. Got the budget, yeah.
Yeah, push that one part in.
Yeah.
And transfer funds, push it far enough.
It's locked in.
There you go.
it's coupled with generous leave. So like maybe not a longevity pay, but at the state we get, you know, more leave, a higher leave bank after 5, 10 and 20 years, I think. Like there's other things, and then it's the work-life balance like I was mentioning. So as admin committee reviews, and I want to highlight this, like your insurance policies and your leave policies, it's the other things that go into, you know, the pensions and all of that kind of thing that go into being here or being a public employee. And the other thing, like, I don't know if there's department heads in the back that need to run at 11 or 11:30. So it would be nice to, I think for me, I have a lot of assumptions and I have a lot of things, but hearing from them might be on this topic would be helpful on what they're seeing and what they're hearing from their staff, since that's just an idea.
Okay. Do any of the department heads care to comment anything, what you're hearing? Put yourself out on a limb.
Don't say it that way. This is a safe place, you guys. We need your input.
I didn't mean that in a bad way, Alexis. Sometimes they're afraid to make comments.
Yes. They shouldn't.
Yeah, we appreciate your support and we're grateful for the support. Really, yeah, talented. Ken and Steve, wonderful. Are any of us gonna say no to?
That one. Has anybody gonna say no to what?
Less money.
More money, yeah.
Okay. Well, don't be afraid to approach any of us, I guess. Outside of this.
And the numbers versus the mechanics versus like the impacts and all of the things. Like it's not like a one lane thing.
Well,
So is there a general consensus that we adjust it to 4%? General nod?
Yes.
Okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's,
It's not in the room.
no,
Hugh.
Yeah, I just have one comment, because I know we talked about this to some extent in joint finance, but I think we have to look at it more than just salaries. We have to look at the broad compensation. And we were sitting here, I think last October, when we finally looked at the roll-up for insurance, we found that basically the county was paying north of 90% of all insurance costs. And so when you look at that relative to what's going on in the marketplace, and even in a lot of other public sector jobs, given where healthcare inflation is high double digit, when you compare it to a consumer price, you know, of 3%, I think you can't deny the things, you know, that we're doing to provide, you know, very secure healthcare budgets, especially family-friendly budgets. And when you talk about the things that were done with the insurance carrier, really wasn't taking benefits away. A lot of it is relative to providing the right incentives so we're better consumers of healthcare. And a lot of the savings are driven that way. And the more that we can do that to make good decision making, everyone benefits and everyone wins. So I just want to make sure, you know, relative to clarification, it could be viewed as taking healthcare away, but no, we're actually doing things in such a way that we're providing the right incentives to have lower care or lower costs at better quality care, such as with the Partners Program. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I think even if maybe they're doing it, we're not involved in the HR work, but anytime we're doing new hires, we need to emphasize our benefits and as part of the salesman's job. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so with that, we'll make some adjustments and we'll have to report back. Steve and I will work on that, and what we'll try to do is provide updates if there's anything that's related specifically to departments when it goes back to the committees in terms of the impact for that, but we'll cover that. Let's just kind of quickly, or not quickly, but just jump ahead then now to the positions, reclasses, and part-time pay rates. Again, you'll see that this is just the draft that was presented at admin and finance. What we do is we allow each year for individual departments to submit what they consider changes that are impacting positions, and then those are sent out for review and then given back a recommendation. So what you'll see is in the department, you'll see the title of the position and then what was requested in red. And then you'll see the initial rationale, and then you'll see a recommendation that came back from a consultant. So I'll walk you through one just to give you an idea. So one of the things that was sent out was for our public health nurse to do a market review. They put down an explanation on that, and the recommendation would be is that at this point that the pay grade that it stays at that location. In other words, while there have been changes based off where our pay scale is, they recommended no change. But now you can kind of go through and you can see what those other recommendations were for all those other positions. The one thing that did occur under the registered deeds, obviously you see that there's one for the deputy, but also the chief deputy. And you can see that they did recommend changes. So there was concern about the other impact on the other, I guess, deputy positions. So the committee asked that we submit all deputy positions for a review, and that is work in progress. So there might be some additional information coming to that. That all being said, just kind of going through, you can see all those other positions. We can take any one of those up if you'd like. But just to kind of go through the summary, you can go through all the way in terms of the fiscal impact on the tax levy for those positions is summarized then on page 9. Because what we do is we also talk about the impact of what we call limited term positions, or positions that are considered part-time and not part of the pay scale. We also look at those wages and see if there should be an appropriate adjustment, and you can see the fiscal impact for those. So based off of that, you can see that the total levy impact, should all these changes be approved, was $92,808. So that number actually is built into the budget, and right now that sits in the payroll contingency. So that's one of the areas where we store funds for these type of recommendations. Should you then make the approval to actually adopt all these changes, then we actually transfer that money into their individual budgets as part of this process. So this lets you know that we do have these initially built into the budget, because again, they're based off a consultant recommendation. So in essence, we'd actually normally we provide a reason why we don't, or we postpone it, but in general, we've historically have followed the recommendation of the payroll consultant if there was a change. Is there any questions on the position reclassifications?
Do we have another kick at the can on the reclassifications?
Yes. I mean, this right now, it just got presented to the committee. The committee gave me input back, so we're looking at the deputy positions, but I'll come back and I'll make my recommendation, but usually the admin committee will review it and they'll make a recommendation of the changes that would go to the county board for adoption as a resolution.
Well, then maybe I'll make my motion at the admin committee area then rather than here, but I was gonna make a motion that maybe we put a hold this year on some of these reclasses.
Nancy, hold on reclass as the study is done, or to what purpose?
The study to be done and to look at some of this stuff a little more closely. If we are going to give extra raises and stuff like that, we might need, that might be a place where we can save a couple pennies.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm assuming that within our policy, the managers have pretty specific criteria in which dictates a reclass. I mean, it's just if I had, and I'm not saying in this case, but if I had 3 more people that I'm supervising, that's not a reclass, that's just, you get 3 more people to supervise. So my question is making sure that we have specific instructions to understand or why they should be able to reclass.
So the general rule of thumb is that their position had changed in some portion, as a percentage, generally like 50%, that 40 or 50% or more, in terms of what their traditional duties were. And then those, and then what happens is that we provide that information. And there's, when the wage is placed on their educational requirements, their experience requirements, and obviously their professional requirements. And all those are put together, and it ends up goes into a black box, let's say, and comes out with a score, and that score places you at a grade. And obviously that grade is then also compared with other similar positions and all that in terms of that, and that ultimately puts you within the pay scale itself. So it's kind of, it's not only the duties and responsibilities and decision-making, but also the market in terms of similar positions, making those types of similar decisions that puts you into the pay grade itself. So normally what happens when they submit something, right? So for like the public health nurse, they actually submitted a whole write-up and a new job description of how that job description has changed, right? And what, in this case, the consultants recommended that while there were changes in some of those duties, it wasn't enough for it to change within the market consideration. So, but there's a standard for them to actually submit and then review those.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a chance that we could get a copy of the old job description and the new job description, and so we can compare how we feel that it's
for certain positions.
yeah, and
I guess part of your last time was if we approve some deputies, some increases in certain departments, next month other departments will be here asking for the same thing. Justifiably, but maybe.
And years ago, you used to put on there whether or not you actually recommended these reclasses, and I noticed this year we don't have that on there.
Well, it just got presented to the committee, and we just got all the results back. So the next version I bring back to the committee will have my recommendation on it. So based off your input, I can say, okay, well, let's hold off then until we do the market review, or if that's some of the questions that I'm hearing, that helps give me some guidance in terms of what your expectations are.
Thank you.
Hearing in response to that and not being on the committee that'll review this, I want to make sure that I think public health nurses and human health or health and human services, I think Joe has a date. So like those positions, I think whatever we can do to help stabilize that as we move in with a new director would be ideal. And then the ADRC as well. I think those are positions that we've heard, not just in the justifications here, but in the context of community support that, everything is important. I understand that, but if you're looking at prioritization, seems like those ones are top. But my actual other comment was, if we jump down to the LTE position increases, I'm not going to start with an assumption. So can you help me understand the changes that are proposed? Are those just based off of how are the changes proposed?
Normally we do is we sit down with each department and ask them about their wages, and they give us what they would like to see in terms of an increase based on what they know as far as experience and pressure they're having as far as those positions.
Okay.
And then obviously we look at also what we're trying to do as far as our payroll adjustment, and we come up with that number. So if you look at for example, on the EMTs, for example, if I did the 1850,
And I guess my question before you go, I want to clarify my question is some are at 50 cents, some are at 25, some are $1. So could we standardize the increase for LTEs so that we're making a consistent 50% or 50-cent jump or 75% for across the board? Or from a budget and a personnel standpoint, I mean, if we're worried about other departments and deputies, right now, does everybody know that some people ask for $1 increase and others only ask for 25% or 25-cent increase? And can we standardize that so that it seems equitable?
So Ken, would those recommendations for that increase basically come from those department heads?
Yeah,
If it's the highway or.
I was gonna say we could standardize, but some areas they're experiencing more pressure and that's why they ask for more and they give us justification. So, I mean, we could definitely look at that, but I know like we had, for example, Kyle, when we worked with the sheriff's department, and I know the sheriff is here as well, they wanted to increase that more just because of trying to get people to take those on, and plus those are actually charged out in terms of we get reimbursed for that. So in that sense, it was more of a market push in terms of being able to get individuals to cover those.
It would be
versus
like the reserve.
percentage.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a little bit of logic in terms of why that was 75 cents versus the other ones are 50. So
Sure. So I guess I'm just, now that all department heads have seen what other department heads have asked for, would they also feel a little bit more like there is this justification for a push and so everything else? So I guess that was my first read of it.
Mhm. And again, for the most part, you'll see that there was areas where they either didn't ask or it was a smaller ask, but we did standardize it. So in some of those areas, they were at 25 cents, but we said, okay, those are all getting 50 cents. So we actually made them 50 cents to standardize it. There were a few that were less under the highway and parks just because of the years of service in terms of that. But we've had, again, part of it's our recruitment and be able to get staff in. So those other years were less. But for the most part, yes, we do try to also standardize it. So
thank you.
So Alexis, on the public health nurse, hi.
Hey, I was like, I hear you.
And this is an issue, and my mom was an RN when I was a little kid. This has been an issue since, when I was a little kid. It's hard to attract public health nurses in general because private pay is much higher. You work for a doctor's office, stuff like that, and this is not a diss on the hospital, but sometimes we lose nurses to the hospital quite out. It's very rarely is it the reverse that we snag one of those. So it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Decades upon decades where, you can work in a doctor's office and make X amount or go work for the county doing public health and not make that amount.
But again, there's the bennies and the pen.
Yeah.
So yeah, uniquely aware. And I appreciate that context. But I understand this is not a new thing that, in that area for sure.
Right. So giving public health nurses raises helps.
But it's not. Yeah.
But to give them a raise where it would be competitive with private companies, that's a national issue. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
and there's one other thing.
Just went back to reclassifications. The thing on nurses is you have to have a 4-year degree to be a public health nurse. You do not need a 4-year degree to work in a hospital, doctor's office, that type of thing. So there's a little extra education involved there. And I'm looking at the birth to 3 educator and service coordinator. I started thinking about that when we left. And I'm not quite sure after 14 years and additional duties and the thing that's interesting is public health nurses plus birth to 3 are both medical models. And I don't, sometimes it's sort of like, this isn't a social work model, which the county is very familiar with, but it's actually a medical model, and kind of wondering if that has anything to do with it and why with the changes in birth to 3 in the last 14 years and the importance of what they do in our community, working with very needy children to bring them up to basically bring them up to speed, why that was not really looked at. I don't know if you know the reason for that, it
Well, I mean, it was
possibly,
looked
again.
at. I mean, it was looked at. We provided them all the updated information and they went through the full review on it. It just didn't qualify for the increase.
Okay.
So-
The black box said.
It's
Yeah,
a black box.
right.
I mean, at this point, it's
Yeah,
the
it
day,
is, right.
just to say.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's where the policy decisions come in, right? And the community specific needs and discussion can happen, to Helen's point.
Okay, Ken, you wanted
Yeah.
to continue with, you were gonna comment before.
Oh, it's okay.
Before I
Yep,
called on
no,
Helen.
that's good.
Okay. She'd been waiting a long time, I think, to.
No, it's good. No.
Okay.
Okay, so just the general feeling is that we should look at what we consider for priorities, but maybe some of the reclasses might be held off for the wage study. Is what some of the consensus is, or,
Yes.
okay, so we'll take a look at that and we'll provide that back as a recommendation, so. Okay, then this is the last item, I'll defer it back to Steve, would be the capital improvement.
So starting on page 10 in your packet, this is our 5-year capital improvement plan, is our long-term financial strategy for planning for major projects. On page 10 and 11 is the 2027 HIP budget. And as part of the budget process, this is approving the funds for the project scheduled for that particular year. So one of the projects I want to go over is on page 11, is the under technology services, the one that's in red. It's the public safety radio system upgrade. Why that one is in red? So this was brought to the finance committee last month. And we made between that time and the second time that finance saw it just this past month, there was a change to that particular project. So just going through this is the project number, that's internal, that's just for us. One of the changes is that we did was the long-term financing for this project. We set about 12.7. Now, again, they just approved the vendor for the equipment. These numbers are going to change, but these are estimates as we know them right now. We are working on getting that bonding number down. So we don't exactly know, but as the committee works with the vendor for the tower project and start working on estimates for the dollar amount and the cost, we'll get more better firm numbers. So we'll have this up to, but this is what we know right now.
I just comment on that, Steve?
Yep, go ahead.
So again, I think the main takeaway from that is right now, let's just round it up. You're looking at a $13 million bond, right? But what our goal is between looking at our funds, right? We talked about the payroll contingency, about having that. We know, for example, the museum project, we have just under 5 million set aside. The project's only be about 3.3. We know we have funds that we can shift and allocate towards this project. So what we're hoping to do is we'll bring it both through finance, but it's not really going to have a impact on the budget per se. What we're really doing is we're going to try to draw down that number as far as we can before we obviously issue the bonds. So just know that that's something that we're working on, and we'll actually have a summary that will be brought not only to the finance committee, but we'll bring it to the full county board just to kind of give you a picture of how this is all coming together and how we intend to bond for the project and how we're going to try to drive that down. This based off what we're looking at right now, we're looking at probably issuing the bond. We'll do the initial engagement sometime in September. And the goal would be is that you'd accept the funds before we adopt the budget in 27. And then you'd have the funds available for both 27 and 28 is what we're looking at for timing. So between now and September, we're going to try to drive down that bond amount as much as we can so we can issue the debt for ourselves. So just to give you an idea on strategy for that. Sorry, Steve.
Nope. And then, so moving over to the other column, when you see numbers in the other column, these are coming from different reserves. We have a little over 18.8 million coming from different reserves. There's grants that we are received as well. And we're saying that the total project is a little over $31.6 million as of right now, as we're speaking today. Going down to the bottom, under the levy column, we mentioned, as you saw in the budget summary, of that 5.1 million in levy. We did have that planned, as our target rate is usually about 4.6 million. But we planned this for the funding for other projects that are coming up. Then I want to jump to page.
Can I say one thing?
Yep, go
So
ahead.
again, as far as mentally where my head's at already, right? So we're at 5.183. We're above our sweet spot, right? And we said we did that intentionally. So that's tax levy money. So again, part of my thought process initially right now is we're going to take some of that to cover the wages. Right? I'm going to draw down that number. I don't, like, for example, we still don't even have an idea what the library project is. We've been setting money aside. I'll cut that back a little bit, right? Because that's tax levy money. So just to give you a mindset of where I'm thinking about already, I'm going to look at some of that to actually find some of those funds to make that happen. So, but again, I'm not making a structural deficit by doing that. That's actually tax levy dollars. So I have it accounted for the next year, right? So that's what we need to find, is money that's not going to create a structural deficit. But again, it's an opportunity for us, right? And we have projects identified, and we can discuss those, and then we have some push and pull there. So just to give you an idea, that's not going to be all of it, but again, quick strategy. Just wanted to point that out, right? So, sorry.
Yep, no problem. I want to jump to the, and then what you're going to see in the other various pages is 28, 29, 30, and 31's detailed projects. But if we jump to the summary on page 17, this is a summary for 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. The one number I want to jump out, you'll see that on the top are the total expenditures. And then on the bottom, where the funding summary, these are where all the funds or the revenue sources are coming for these particular job or projects. One number I just wanted to point out is the tax levy portion. So right now in 27, we have that 5,183,000. But then you can see that the levy portion for 28, 29 is jumping down below that $4.6 million going forward as what we have. So what we're seeing is that there's really not too many major projects coming except for the tower project. So that's one of the things, documents that we looked at. What's that?
Middle station.
And middle station. Yep, that is correct. So those two, but then after that, it's kind of, there's really nothing that we know of. So I don't know if there's any specific questions related to the KIP, but that was really basically, unless Ken had something else that he wanted to cover. So that was about it that I had on the KIP part. You have a question? You look at me like you have a question.
It's just my annual reminder. When I was on Judiciary and Public Service Committee, and there was a general review of the middle station, several of the towns, said they would be willing to help fund the capital portion. And that's, another 1.4 that you have in the KIP. That would be 1.4 that we could, repurpose for needs. What's the process for engaging those towns as they look through their budget proposals? Since we know that middle station, a lot of that is driven by tourist volume. And as we know, the county gets, $0 relative to, direct impact, as you would with lodging revenues and other things that the towns get. So my question is, are we going to take them at their word that they're willing to help fund? And how do you engage with them to tell them what they're willing to fund?
Again, I could have Aaron come up. I'll walk delicately in this one. I think part of the discussion is that they're willing to be partners, but I don't think they ever willingly said that they're going to throw money on it. So, for example, Jacksport offered us to attach onto their property and use their land versus a cash contribution. And I guess the one thing too, I don't want to divide the communities up, but their argument is that we continue to collect the sales tax and not share any of the sales tax with them. So why should we share our room rate revenue tax, right? So I don't want to get into that kind of debate back and forth and allocation of who's getting more money from tourist dollars, because that's part of their argument. So again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I guess I'm I'd rather keep it more positive in terms of trying to say, well, the communities are getting room tax dollars, we're not getting any of that. Versus, right, we're getting the increased sales tax that is shown from the tourism as well. So it's, I don't wanna, I'm trying to avoid that kind of discussion with the communities. I think Aaron's reached out to them and said, hey, how can we build a partnership and what are you willing to do? But my understanding is that neither community that were initially part of those discussions was willing to say, we're going to throw cash at the project.
Well, I took it in what their responses were was property, sharing the land, things they had, you know, whether it's septic, generators, things like that, the partnership. I never took it as they would fiscally contribute.
I think the county has to be careful the path we go down. That the most recent was probably at the bug fire station, and they provided space there. Going back 20 plus years, the station up in Sister Bay, it was a similar situation, and I'd like to see us stay in that sort of partnership. So there are benefits going to Jacksonport, where they said
there would be, available. You know, as we looked at it early on, benefits to Egg Harbor Fire or Jacksonport Fire. And we'll find that out here shortly once the consultant does that work.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think it's been a good session.
Yep, I got one more.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
One more thing to cover with you guys, and that's just our initial forecast. And again, we're just talking strategy, but again, building off the budget as it stands now. The one, we don't have the exact numbers, but right now we stand about 1.5 to $2 million over for 28. So that's where we stand. Now, what's driving that is really couple items: wages, insurance, and our tower project are the three main driving factors. So again, for the tower project, it's a little bit of a variance in a range, because remember at the retreat, we presented, well, how do you want to cover the annual maintenance going forward, right? So if we continue to use the model of dividing that 50-50, in other words, if we put that outside the levy under EMS, then that's a different fiscal impact versus you guys saying, let's put it all under the levy side and find the money for that. So that's a policy decision that we will need you to make. But I think one of the things, obviously, out of the session for today is going to say, well, how are we going to start working on chipping away at that gap? I think the one thing that Steve and I have talked about is, obviously we talked about various levers that we could pull as far as tools, right? But then also too, we actually can now refine the budget a little bit for 28, and then I'll give some targets for the departments to hit, right? So we know that we can pull some of the levers and get there, and then we're gonna have to say, okay, for us to get that rest of the way, we need to actually look at making some, I guess, course corrections within our budgets. So we're hoping to have some of that stuff done even this year yet, just for people to start thinking about that. So some of that might be that we look at positions and maybe not refill them, should they not be strategic, right? It's gonna be up for each department to kind of look at that and think about it. But again, we'll look at some of those philosophies, and we'll keep on discussing that with the board and the admin committee and stuff going forward. But we do know we need to make some type of course correction, and we knew it was coming. So it's just a matter of how do we address it and how do we gonna move forward with that. So just to kind of give you the picture of that's kind of where we're at. We're definitely not panicking, but there's work in front of us to kind of get us there. So just want to give you that kind of a heads up.
And just for my own brain, that's contemplating or including the known retirements that we have too. We're still gonna have a deficit. That large of a deficit.
What was the question?
The retirements?
Retirements. That's including the known retirements.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say yes. It'll be that range. Yes, correct.
Okay.
So again, more to come on that. But again, just so you know that we'll be working on a strategy, and we'll be probably working through finance and some of the details for that and how we're going to try to move forward with that. And then we'll keep on refining that number. So I guess our goal is when we do that next retreat, let's say we plan our next county board retreat for next June, right? It shouldn't be a surprise of what do we do. We're going to have hopefully a good working session of saying, okay, this is where we were now. This is what we put together for our strategy, and we got 80% of the way there. What are some other things we want to do type thing? But our goal is to have a good strategy for you by the next June, so that way we have an idea where we need to be. So just to give you a heads up that way.
Okay, I think this has been a good workshop. It was kind of an informal, not following an approved agenda or anything. And with that, I think I have the prerogative to say we're adjourned. Okay.